Hi everyone, Dr. Nicole LaPera, the holistic psychologist here. So this video is going to be on leaving your habit self. First, I'm going to talk about what your habit self is, and then 5 steps to begin to practice breaking out of that habit self. So what is it? So the habit self is the conditioned self from the past. So what is conditioned? Our thoughts are conditioned, our beliefs are conditioned, our emotions are conditioned in many ways. Now remember, when I say emotions, I also mean our body and our body's physiology and our energy and all of those things that are based on that connection between the mind and the body. Also included are our patterns, our patterned ways of being. We are incredibly habitual creatures, us humans. So whether we're talking about our just behavioral or daily habit patterns, or our patterns in relationships, how we show up, how we relate with others, how we relate with ourselves. So that's what the habit self is, because most of us are living our daily life in autopilot. And when we are in autopilot, what is running our day-to-day choices is that subconscious part of our brain. And that's where our habit self lives. So unless we start to make a choice to show up differently, our habit self is going to be what's dictating our daily choices. So how do we begin to practice breaking out of our habit self? So 5 steps. First is build a discipline habit muscle, which means creating habits, whatever they might be. I always talk a lot about small daily promises. A habit starts with one of those, a very small promise that we practice keeping. That's all discipline is, a stated intention, and then the action, the follow-up of that intention. So remember, when you're setting up your intention, keep that promise small. I use that word for a very particular reason, that small daily promise. But this takes practice. It's a new habit we have to create. I am someone who was undisciplined in most aspects of my life. So this was not an easy step. That meant for me every day, first starting with one promise, setting that as an intention, and keeping it, despite what my habit self was trying to dictate otherwise. So begin to create habits, discipline habits in your life somewhere, anywhere. One of my followers, one of my community members, it started with a glass of water. So that's a perfectly fine, or 5 minutes of silence could be a great habit that you build a discipline muscle around. Number 2, future self journal to create consciousness. So I created a tool. Those of you who are not yet on my email list might want to jump on. I will link it in the notes below so that you can get these prompts. This is a way every day. I do mine in a journal. So I just follow those prompts every day, every morning. And what that is, it's the habit of 2 things really, of creating an intention. So this connects back in with 1. Every day I set an intention, to change or to be different throughout just that one day. That's my promise that day. Journaling in this way also does a second thing. It creates consciousness. Because remember, when I'm in autopilot, my habit self is going to dictate my habits throughout that day. Behavioral, interpersonal, emotional, whatever it is. Every morning, if I set a new intention of showing up in a different way in the world, I'm activating consciousness. I'm showing up now as that person who gets to choose and break out of my habit self, which might be the pivotal difference between later that day when I want to keep my intention of doing it and not doing it. Meaning when I created the intention and I brought it up to my conscious awareness that, oh yeah, I'm working on this new habit today. I might be more likely to keep that habit later that day. Number 3, get past mental resistance. So this is something I just want to throw out there for each of you listening. Your habit self is going to try to argue the case along the way. So whatever the intention is, whatever you would have been doing otherwise as dictated by your habit self, you're going to hear that mental chatter. All of the reasons why not to do this new thing. You might even feel uncomfortable doing this new thing. It might show up in your body. You just don't feel right or normal because you're doing something unfamiliar. So first and foremost, don't anticipate that mental resistance isn't there. It's going to be there. And again, it's going to take the form of all of the thoughts, all of the reasons why not to do this new thing. Some of us might get it in our body, just feel unfamiliar, uncomfortable to ourselves. Practice getting past it. Practice showing up as that conscious self and keeping that promise to yourself to do it anyway. And again, this is just, along with the habit of discipline, something that just takes practice. So, my resistance is there, and I'm going to choose to keep this promise over here because I know why I'm doing it. Which brings me to celebrate victories. This can be for a lot of us, we think this is so inconsequential, such a silly step. It's so important. Each and every time you keep, whether it's your discipline habit or you keep your promise of journaling or you create your intention to change and you keep it throughout your day, notice, celebrate yourself. Celebrate each and every time you do something despite your mental resistance telling you not to do it. Celebrate those victories. It can be so motivating and so empowering to help you get past that mental resistance the next time and do it again. So the final one is to begin to recreate or to reframe our stories around failure. A lot of us have a relationship with failure that is very, as I would call, cataclysmic, meaning if I don't do this one thing this one day, I'm now awashed. I'm never going to do this again. I'm hopeless. I'm helpless. I can't change. That's not going to set you up to have a chance at keeping that promise that next day. So for a lot of us, this journey is reframing those stories. And something I would always remind to my clients is each moment, reminding yourself that each moment, literally each moment, gives you another opportunity to make a new choice. So even if you made a less than positive choice this past moment, this next moment in front of me, I might say, you know what, I am going to keep that promise. I am going to keep my discipline habit. I am going to go journal or whatever it is for you. So a lot of us can do ourselves a great disservice by changing that relationship with failure and by reminding yourself actively that each moment really does afford you with another opportunity. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Those of you who aren't subscribed, if you did like what you heard today, that would be awesome if you hit the subscribe button.